There's some pretty good beatboxers out there, though. You guys remember Rozelle?
I don't actually.
Yeah, look him up.
Me personally.
Look him up. What's up, everybody?
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Mia, welcome back to the cave. It's your boy Joe Reezy, and I'm here with Jermaine. And before we introduce our guest and get started, make sure you guys check out our sponsors at safelightcandle.com. If you need lighting for your home, your workspace, or your studio, go check out safelightcandle.com. Also, if you want to enjoy exclusive content from the cave, get access to our Discord community filled with crazy ass people like you and me 24/7, and receive some free giveaways from the Cave Mart, then check out our Patreon page. Link to that should be on our website, cave4v3.com. We got Joel Thomas inside the cave. Welcome to the Cave Podcast. Joel, what's up?
How you doing, guys?
Good, man.
Doing great, man. Did a deep dive on you the past few days, and I have a bunch of your songs on my iPhone now. Agartha has been on repeat on my phone, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah, people tend to like that one a lot. So,
yeah, man. I was actually curious because your style kind of goes from rap, but it's not really rap. You sing kind of, you vocalize, right?
Yeah, I sang before I ever rapped. So when I was in high school, I played piano as a kid, and my mom always had me in some sort of music somewhere. She played everything: piano, guitar, sang, and she wanted me to be involved with music. So I played piano up until I was in high school, and then she gave me a choice. She said, you could either keep playing piano or you can move into chorus and sing. And I just felt like singing would be, something I would enjoy more. I was playing a lot of sports and doing some other things, and I just didn't want to play piano anymore. So I went into singing. And then when I got out of school, I really started connecting with hip hop, and I wanted to rap. So I started rapping in the early 2000s, back when it was a little bit tougher for Caucasians to break through. So I kind of was on the cusp of like right after Eminem, Bubba Sparks had just hit with Timbaland. So it was around that era, and I started coming up. But one thing I never really let go was harmonizing and singing and all that. And as I moved on, I'd say in probably the past 6 years, I really started incorporating a lot of different sounds, a lot of different genres too, because I'm not just a hip hop fan. I just love all music. So whether it's, country or rock or whatever else, pop, I like to incorporate a lot of different sounds with what I do. So I wanted to do that. And at the same time, I wanted to start incorporating a different message with what I do too, as far as being able to connect with people on a visceral level, on a level that they can understand what's going on in the world today, and, the connectivity that we should have with our neighbor and people around us, because I think that's one thing that gets lost is humanity with what's going on in the world today. People start dehumanizing each other, and I wanted my music to reflect the opposite of that.
Brother, in rap too, where like it's battle rap and you diss people, so it's really honorable what you're doing, man. Has that always been the purpose?
Absolutely not. So I would say when I first started out, for sure not. I started out, like you said, in that battle rap mentality. I wasn't a battle rapper, but I definitely was the type of person. You didn't even have to be a musician, and if you looked at me wrong, you might find yourself on a song, even if it was underground. I was just crazy like that back then. And in saying that too, I think because I was Caucasian, I felt a little bit more chip on my shoulder to prove something all the time, because the guys that I worked with weren't white, so multiracial, but weren't white. So for me, I had to be that much better, and I was very concerned with lyrics and wordplay and triple entendres, all that stuff still is very important to me. But when you come up kind of on that beef battle scene, those things are highlighted, punchlines, those type of things. So definitely I was all about the drugs, women, anything you can name back then. I went through a phase of my life too where I chased fame to the point that, I wanted to sell my soul. I became a Freemason. A lot of these things I crossed the line with. And, looking back on it, I wish I would have made a better decision. But at the end of the day, those decisions also opened my eyes to a lot of things more so that are going on in the world. So I can speak from a place of experience where some people that are in this, I hate even using the word truther community, don't speak from a place of experience because they speak from the outside looking in. And I know from being on the in and be able to talk about what it is, what it ain't, it's definitely something I don't follow anymore. And, I definitely had a huge turn in my life, several years ago to where I wanted to give back to people and not, part of my reason why that I went down a dark path into the occult and Freemasonry and all that was you're willing to do whatever to get to where you got to get to. And also I always had the lenses off as far as knowing what was going on in the world. So I was never, in some sort of delusion that, everything was all good. I knew what was going on. And to me, I would rather be on the opposite side of the sheep getting herded. I'd rather be the person herding them. So that was another big driving force for me early on. It was the knowledge, it was the power. It wasn't just the fame. I tell people the fame was the thing that got me in the door, but the knowledge and power was just as equal, if not more important to me at the time. Because think about it, you're getting access to information that nobody else is allowed to get to. And that's very alluring in and of itself. You look at King Solomon, he started out a godly man. And by the end of his reign, he was worshiping all kind of pagan gods. He was, he was doing things that he didn't initially start out doing, but that's because he wanted more knowledge, more and more knowledge, and he crossed the line. And I think a lot of people can cross those lines. Doesn't mean we can't come back from them, but I can at least speak from a place of experience and tell people that, hey, this is what it is. This is what it isn't. I know where I'm at now, and I know what I want to give back to the community and back to people, because I think that that's how you really fight the system on the ground, is being able to connect with each other and being able to build an infrastructure that no matter what these people in power do, it really doesn't matter. Because if you don't let it affect you, and you fight back by, love and compassion instead of, screaming and yelling all the time, which doesn't really get us much of anywhere. I feel like we can get further into reaching our goals of being able to fight the system. And listen, I'm not here to say that if there comes a point in time that we have to do something, I won't say this on air, but if we have to do something also, I feel like people should always be ready, if you get my drift. So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying though, that screaming and yelling all the time isn't the answer. Waking people up's not the answer. A buddy of mine, Juan Ayala, says it best. He said that, our job isn't to wake people up. It's to give information, and people can take it and dissect it the way that they want to. But our job is to love people and connect with people. And if we do that, I feel like that's how we make headway in being able to disrupt, what they're trying to do to us.
Right. Shout out to Juan. Yeah, we're pretty much a library, right? You can come in, you can check it out, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's no hidden agenda to it. And what's funny? I feel like rap in particular, it might be biased because I like rap and I listened to rap growing up, but there's something about rap that almost keeps you accountable of what you say. Like, are you going to do it? You know what I mean? Are you just writing lyrics just to kind of sound cool? Or are you going to do that shit? Right. You think that kind of pushed you in order to venture off and cross the line and be a Freemason? Because something about the truther community is there's also a demographic of people that just read about it, and down motherfuckers that go and see, what's really good over there. So you think rap kind of pushed you to do?
Absolutely. So rap caused me to do a lot of things that I probably wouldn't normally have done, because if you're rapping about it, you got to be it, right? So I think it's like the snake that eats its tail. It's the same concept. You're constantly going in a circle because you're chasing yourself. And I think people a lot of times do those type of things because of insecurities they have inside. I know I had insecurities myself. We all do, you know, whether we want to admit it or not. And what we project is what we want people to see. So for me, you know, being on in the hip hop scene, and again, being a Caucasian in a predominantly non-Caucasian environment, you know, I felt like I had to be something bigger. And you either do one or two things. Either you fake it and you rap about it, fake things, or you do what you say. And I was the type of person that did what I said, but you know, I would rap about something, then I go do it just to justify what I just said. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, I did this. Now I can rap about this more. I can talk about this more. I can do this. So it just becomes this never ending cycle. And you notice that with a lot of guys in hip hop now, you know, even guys that are pretty big names in the industry, they do the same thing. You know, you see them, you're like, man, this guy's got millions of dollars. Why is he doing this stupidity? It's the image. It's to promote what he's rapping about. And they feel like they have to do that because it keeps some sort of reputation for at the forefront. And it's sad, really, because I feel like that is been the downfall of the hip hop community, is that never ending cycle. And, you know, and I'm sure you guys are very aware of the early 90s and the CIA getting involved with the hip hop movement. You know, I would even say the late 80s. I think that they were, first off, the CIA has been involved in all aspects of music. And when we can go back throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, even with rock music, where they got involved with manipulating people's minds with hallucinogenics and everything else when it comes to music. So music's always been at the forefront of what the government's pushing. But I think that they saw an opportunity to not only fill up the privatized prisons, because that's the one everybody goes to. They're filling up the privatized prisons. They're making more money, obviously more money, but also to keep people in a state of despair and not being able to see that where they can move to a better place in life. Because if you feel like you're desperate all the time, you're going to do desperate things.
Facts. You know, it's something about music and saying something too. It's kind of powerful and magical. You're almost, you know, affirming yourself. You're saying things sometimes before it happens. Yeah. Because of that pressure you put on yourself, you go and do it. Right. Now that can also be weaponized as well, just like you said. But what's cool about this is you're kind of opening up the perspective to people listening that, hey, you could take this weapon and use it. You know, it doesn't need to be used against you. Just like you said, like there's rappers that rap about being rich when they're broke as fuck. And guess what? You know what I mean? Keep rapping sometimes. I mean, granted, there are some people that still need to keep rapping about it. You know what I mean? But some rappers have done it. And yeah, like you said about the CIA programming and that being weaponized, I feel like that's why there's a lot of alcohol references in music now. And I feel like weed is way over pushed now. I feel like it's almost being used to kind of dumb us down to be more susceptible to MK Ultra methods, you know, instead of using it now to kind of get a different perspective. You feel me?
Yeah. I mean, think about the way that hip hop's changed from the late 90s or even mid 90s to the early 2000s to now, where it used to be the thing to rap about was being the drug dealer and being the pimp. Now it's about being a simp and being a drug addict. So it's completely different now. It's actually changed on its head. You look at a lot of the SoundCloud rappers that came out during that era, they changed that whole thing. You know, XXX, Juice WRLD, a lot of those guys, when they came out, they changed that whole, you know, Lil Xan, all those guys changed this mentality of what, you know, the person that was rapping was doing. So now it's become different. You know, it's even more desperate, in my opinion. It's actually frowned upon to be the pimp now, you know, in certain circles. But I would say there's still some guys still rapping about it. But at the end of the day, it's not the same like it used to be. Whereas you had guys like 50 and, you know, G Unit when they came out. I mean, you know, they're doing songs about pimping. And then all of a sudden, the shift came in probably about 2015, 2016, where they basically it's all part of that masculinization, taking the masculine man away. And I think that even happened in hip hop. Not to say that it was a positive message to begin with those things, but it was different. And it was more, I'm a masculine man, this is what I do. And now, hey man, these rappers are up here with dresses on rapping. It's completely different now. You know what I mean? You got Lil Nas X with fake baby bumps, having fake kids. And you could say that's all part of the agenda too. It's even argued that Lil Nas X might not even really be gay. This is just all part of some facade that he's being paid to play to push this agenda. You got to look at those things too, man. These guys are there for the money. They're going to do what they want for the money, and they'll play the part, because when you're getting thrown millions and millions of dollars, listen, they say, hey, we just want you to play a part. Behind closed doors, you can be yourself, but just out here in the public eye, we want you to be this. Most people will take it. I'll be honest with you. Even the people that say right now they wouldn't do it, unless you're that strong in who you are, most people are going to take the money.
Like what Diddy's doing right now. I mean, all that stuff. I feel like Diddy has contributed a lot to it. Just reading all the court cases, and I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? But just going back to it, and people are posting up his lyrics and kind of saying, hey, this is questionable. It's like, and I'm just kind of drawing the lines to what you're saying too. It's like, I think Diddy has a big hold in, let's say, the hip hop and rap community because of his name. He's like, yo, I was Bad Boy, I had Biggie, so everyone's gonna come to him because he's one of the richest producers out there right now, and he probably has that hold. And like Meek Mill, maybe he told Meek Mill, I can revive your career, you just got to do some shit for me,
Yeah, and it's funny you brought up Diddy. I've done some deep dives on Diddy, and all the way back. I mean,
it's not new. It's not
new.
Right?
I mean, if you want to, you could start back in 1994 with Craig Mack. He started with him, and he basically took what Craig Mack was putting out and used it as a gateway for Biggie, because when they dropped Flavor in Your Ear, they did that remix of Busta Rhymes and LL Cool J, and he put Biggie on one of Craig Mack's songs. And when he did that, they basically just pushed Craig Mack to the back, because Diddy used to make fun of how he looked and said he didn't have the look to garner the attention. They basically pushed him to the side. He ends up dying on some craziness back in 2018. And then you had Mace come along in 1996. Listen, man, Mace was rapping about having sex with underage girls. People forget those songs like I Need to Be. He's sitting there basically rapping about how to groom an underage girl. The whole skit that starts it out is basically his homeboy telling him that this girl's underage, and then he proceeds to rap about it and basically says, tomorrow I use that to pressure to undress her, but the more I caress her, the more I feel like a molester. So you know what I mean? Like, he's basically stating what he is. Yeah. So Diddy was also not only facilitating this behavior, but he was grooming people to come into the group. Look at Usher. Usher was what, 12 years old? They say 14, but man, it was already stated he was 10 or 12 when he was hanging out with Diddy, and sleeping in bed with him. He says this in front of Kevin Hart. We know this happened. Like, this happened. We've heard Diddy say it out of his mouth in front of Usher and in front of Kevin Hart. The point Kevin Hart's like, gave him that look like, bro, you're giving away the secrets. Like, we can't be telling all these people what we're doing behind these closed doors. Even if Kevin's not involved in any of that stuff, he's involved in Hollywood, and he knows he's got to protect his own. That's just kind of how it works, right? But Diddy, Justin Bieber, man, we can go down the line of people that he brought in and groomed. But if you notice, a lot of these guys that left Diddy that were able to get out turned hardcore religious. Mace ended up becoming a preacher. Craig Mack got super religious. You look at Shine. Shine also got super religious. You know what I mean? He basically went back to Belize and became a rabbi. So it's really wild when you look at it. Really, the only guy that's really survived And I can tell you why he did is MGK. MGK is the only guy that's really survived this whole Diddy thing. Well, it's probably because MGK is willing to play ball all the way. And you can tell he has sold his soul all the way. And he has become, he even survived the Eminem beef, which nobody survived really any of those type of battles. And
I thought he won. I thought MGK won that battle.
Really? You think he did?
I think Eminem fell off as far as lyrical sharpness. So I think MGK struck. He's like Jake Paul. He challenged Tyson when he's old. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would differ on that only because when you listen to that Kill Shot song, the layers of that song are insane. Like the triple entendres are nuts. When you listen to some of those bars, they mean like 4 different things. The song itself, Kill Shot, was based on a old movie called Kill Shot that was based around a character that got killed in that movie whose name was Coulson, and that's MGK's real name. That's the layers Eminem and the depth he goes to like take you out. Like on the surface level, it may look like they're neck and neck, but when you break down like the intricate bars, you're like, whoa, like he spent that much time to tear this man apart. And it really, to me, I thought he just hit him with the jab. I don't even think it was that hardcore of what he could have done. I almost think he was setting him up, hoping he would come back with something else because he had something else. But at the end of the day, that's neither here nor there. But like you said, MGK won, Eminem won, whatever. He still survived it, and he's thriving. Like he's also thriving in a rock market where nobody was thriving in. He almost really single-handedly brought back hip-hop punk, which had gone away from a while, so he brought that back. He's still selling out arenas. At the end of the day, he's probably the one Diddy guy who didn't die and who's doing okay, which lets you know he had to be really doing something behind the scenes, because all these other guys, they either fell off or they disappeared, and there's reasons why they did that.
Because he's still blowing Diddy.
Don't doubt it. I mean, that's a huge possibility, man. I mean, who knows, right? In these circles, the things that you have to give up to not only get this level of fame, but to maintain it too, man, because there are guys that get there and you'll see them fall off real quick. One of 2 reasons. Either they get in the circle and they realize what the circle is and they're not about it, so they get blackballed in the industry, whatever industry that is, or they get in there and they start doing it and then they feel bad about it and then they try to back out and then again they get blackballed or they die. Some people die for that too.
Yeah. Also, once you've done the deed, like it's easier to get you to do it again. So you know what I mean. Once the seal's broken. Yeah, exactly. Man. Well, shit. We uncovered a lot of things, but before we get off rap, I want to know your top 3 white rappers in order.
White rappers.
I've asked this to a few people, so it's not personally to you.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
For me, it's a hard tie between Mac Miller and Eminem. I don't know who to give it to.
I like Mac a lot. I mean, I didn't like Mac early on. That's a funny story. I wasn't a big fan of Mac when he first came out. I really just didn't get it. And I think, the later albums, I got it. Also, when he started singing and opened up that side of him too, it just was like, man, this guy's super talented. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there'd be any order for me, but Eminem would be there. Probably Mac would be in the mix. And I brought him up earlier. I was always a big Bubba Sparxxx fan. I think he was super slept on when he came out. I think that he was very lyrical, and I think he was ahead of his time. I think, especially when that second album came out, because it was like country rap. Nobody was doing that. And Timbaland produced that. And it was, I remember it got like 4.5 stars. And this is back when the Source actually mattered. I remember it got 4.5 stars in the Source, and that was unheard of for something like that. And it was so groundbreaking. I remember XXL gave it, I don't know, maybe even gave it an XL. And I just remember it didn't sell. Nobody understood it. And I think it was ahead of its time. I think if it would have came out in the past 5 to 6 years, it would be nuclear, because he was so good lyrically and he had his own sound. There wasn't anybody rapping like him at the time. And he had Timbaland's beats, which at the time, Timbaland was like on top, in that realm of like Dre and all those guys. So that'd probably be, I'll say loosely the 3, man. I could always change it from time, depending.
Bubba Sparks, that's
though.
dope as fuck, man. Ugly and Deliverance were my shit. So I feel you, bro.
Deliverance, man.
Deliverance
was phenomenal, brother.
Yep.
Like, that was phenomenal.
Man, I'd be in middle school on car rides just looking out, fucking like 12 years old, thinking about my life. Like, my life hasn't even started yet. Fucking that song taking places. Oh, man, that's some crazy stuff. So, Freemason. Dude, we had Thomas over here, but we talked about so many crazy shit. Like, we didn't even scratch the surface to Freemasonry. So I'd like you to break the seal for that. So there's a lot of myths that come around Freemason, Illuminati or just a religious club. What is it? What would you describe it as?
All the above. Yeah, I don't think anybody is wrong with how they look at Freemasonry. Okay. But I do think that it's overhyped. And I think that just myself being in, and I'm not saying I was some 33rd degree or anything like that. I did come to a crossroads in my life where I had to make a decision for my family, or I was going to go down this dark road. And I probably would have achieved the things that I wanted to if I had I chose family. So I know I had an opportunity. The path was there for me to go as far as I wanted to in Freemasonry. I talked to the guys. I'll say this, and I'll tell the story of how I became a Freemason too, as well, because that'll help kind of set the tone. But one of the things is when you're in there, 95% of those guys, man, don't have a clue. It's just a boys' club. It's just a fraternity for guys to help the community, which we did a lot of, and also to have some perks. You know what I mean? You're in a club with guys that are police officers, judges, whatever. Something happens, you get a ticket. I mean, you get it knocked off. You get pulled over by a police officer. He sees the square and compass on the back. Sometimes they'll let you go. Like, just, you know what I mean? There's little things like that that are involved with it. For me, though, it was about power and knowledge. And most of the guys in there wouldn't have even known that I was in there for those reasons. They would think that I was in there for good purposes, and not to say that I didn't have some of those things that were in me to want to do good, but overall it was selfish reasons. And how it started for me was, I had a buddy of mine. He was my hype man when I did shows, and we traveled around, did music. So he and I wanted to become Freemasons. Our goal, and this was back during like the Jay-Z hype, like the Illuminati hype when it came out. This is like that, 2008 to 2012 era where everybody was like, he threw up the Baphomet. You know what I mean? Everybody was going nuts, right? Every time, Jay-Z would put out a video and you're looking for every little intricate symbol. And not to say he wasn't putting it in there, because he definitely was, but
it wasn't like that. On to the next one music video was very dissected by everyone. Remember that one?
Oh my God. That was a crazy video though.
Yeah, it was.
But, for me, I wanted to cross that line and become, something greater. I was like, man, I see these guys like Drake, these guys, they sold their soul to get where they wanted to get to. So I was looking to be a Freemason. Now, the first guy I ever met that was a Freemason, I was waiting tables at this restaurant. He came in, and I noticed he had square and compass on his shirt, and he was an older white man. And I'm bringing up race for a reason, because we're going to get to where I got to in Freemasonry. But I saw a square and compass. I got to talking to him. I knew what to ask him, and he kind of gave me like the little nod, and he talked to me. He said, "Listen, if you're looking to join the lodge, and obviously we got a vetting process, but we want you to come out, break bread with us." That's generally how all lodges will do. They have like a Thursday or a Tuesday. You come in, sit down and eat, and then they let you go, because then they're going to go into the lodge and do whatever at that point. So he invited my buddy and I to go out there. Now, my buddy's black. He's got dreads down his shoulders. You know what I mean? Like tatted up. And this is Georgia now. I live in Georgia. So this is before Freemasonry started to integrate more. This was like 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. So now what they had, there's two sects of Freemasonry. You've got mainstream Freemasonry, and then you've got Prince Hall Freemasonry. Now, Prince Hall Freemasonry is predominantly African American and everything else, right?
Okay.
This is in the South, so you're going to see Black Freemasons in Prince Hall, and you're going to see white Freemasons in mainstream Freemasonry in the South. You may see some people from other races in the other, depending on what cities that you're in, but for the most part, that's just how it is in the South, or was in the South. It's different, a little different now. Up north, very different. You'll see Prince Hall Freemasonry super integrated, as well as mainstream Freemasonry. So it's always been like that. So I'm setting the tone. I'd say he's an older white man. I would say older. He's probably late 30s, right? Maybe early 40s. Okay. And we go out to this area called I can't even remember the city now. It's like a backwoods city in Georgia. So Fort Valley, that's what it was. Fort Valley, Georgia. So we get out to Fort Valley and we go to this little downtown city, and it's in this like old historic building. So we go in there. It's just a bunch of old white dudes in there. And then when I say old, some of these dudes are like, early 70s, man. Yeah. And I'm walking in with this dude with dreads down to his shoulders, tatted up. But he's a cool dude. So he's like, he knows how to interact with anybody. He's not he's not a type of person that can't, morph into the environment that they're in. That was something that he and I were always able to do. Depending on where we're at, we were able to connect with whoever's there, which we got along really good with the younger white guys. I mean, even like I said, even the worshipful master, who oddly enough, that was the guy I talked to, the guy that ran the lodge when I ran into him. He was really nice. They sat down, ate with us, and he and this other guy who was in his mid 30s talked to us like, look, man, we're going to be honest with you because we don't lie here. We would be perfectly fine with having you guys be a part of this lodge. These guys will not. Well, as a matter of fact, we would be okay with you pointing at me. Oh, man. They would be okay with you, but not you. And they're like, listen, it's not about what we want. But at this point, these guys are like the past masters. I mean, they've ran this place. So that's basically what it came down to. And my buddy's like super cool too. He's like, I appreciate you being honest. He's like, at least not shirking us off and telling us, some BS and not telling us the truth. So we end up leaving. So that's just a dead end. Oddly enough, about 8 months later, I'm working a different job, and I am still waiting tables, and I'm talking to this group of ladies, all African American, and they're in there for like some bachelorette party or something, right? And I'm getting along really good with them. We're talking. Well, this dude comes walking in, and he's probably about 6'3", about 250, kind of yoke kind of dude. Black dude comes in, and he's got a wooden square and compass, like beaded, and it's huge. Okay. Like the square and compass is huge, it's wooden though. I'd never seen one like that. I was like, man, that's dope. So he comes in and he takes care of the whole tab. Like, I guess his girl was one of the girls that are there. He takes care of the whole tab. On his way out, I say the same thing I told the worshipful master from the White Lodge. I give him the same phrase. He does the same thing, kind of that raises the eyebrow. And I'm like, look, man, I want in. What do I need to do to get in? He's like, look, call me at this specific time and this specific day, and I'll pick up the phone and we'll talk. So it was like a week later. So I had to call at a certain time, pick up, and he picks up. He's like, what's going on? He's like, tell me why you want to be in. So I told him the whole story about the other lodge, and he said, cool. He's like, I like what you're saying. He's like, call back at another time and another day. Same thing. He puts me through this whole thing where I have to call him again. We talk again. At that point, he wants me and my buddy to meet the worshipful master of the lodge. So we go to this dude's house to meet him. And I think he's out back chopping wood or something, man. I don't even remember. But we get to talking to him, and he kind of gives us the lowdown. Like, look, you're going to come in the lodge with some other people that want to be part of the lodge. And, we're going to vote. We're going to give you some things, and we're going to vote. And at that point, if you're voted in, then you can go through the process. You can go through all the initiation rites and everything else. So, we're like, well, we're down, and so we get there, and at that point, they have never had a white guy come to that lodge ever. Like I was the first in like 100 years. That lodge has been around for 100 years. I was the first to go through it in 100 years. So again, I'd been rapping for years, man. So for me, it was just kind of like, best, whatever, cool.
Saying you.
Right. So we get into it and we end up going through it. I was the only one to make it. Like out of the whole thing, even my friend didn't make it. So that caused a rift between me and him as well. It's just naturally we tried not to let it affect us, but those type of things can happen.
It's like a slow burn kind of thing.
Slow burn. Yeah, it was. I mean, because there's that insecurity. Like the one guy, he made it and I didn't. Does he look at me any different? Is there this, that? So I ended up making it and getting through it. I was very proficient in my knowledges. Matter of fact, they said I was one of the most proficient they had ever seen come through there. There were talks of me even being, working my way up to different levels and all stuff I won't talk about here. But, there were opportunities there. And I was definitely on the path of what I wanted to be. And this is to give people a little bit of an inside look without, saying anything that I think would, I don't want, my family or anybody to get anything to happen there. But I will say that most of the guys in there are just there for good reasons. But I can say there were a handful that I knew that they knew what I knew. And it was a filling out process of, okay, what are you willing to do? Like, where do you want to go? They would ask certain questions and they would, check my answers. And if I said the things that they thought that I should, they'd be, okay, well, yeah, we can get you over here, man. No worries. Because once you're in. And you can, the sky's the limit. You can kind of go wherever you want to with it. There's so many different houses that are underneath Freemasonry that you can get into, Scottish rites, all that stuff. There's so many different Shriners. People don't understand you got to be a Mason to be a Shriner. That opens you up into becoming a Shriner at that point. All those things have to happen first. You got to go through the initial Master Mason, become a Master Mason, and all that other stuff opens up. And generally they'll be pretty open with you. But I can say I went through a really rough time in my life where, I dealt with some crazy stuff with my son. I dealt with some crazy stuff just in my life in general that really brought me to a breaking point of I'm going to lose the people close to me to achieve this. Am I willing to do that to achieve that? And I thought all along that I would be, but I think once you're faced with that, you realize like who you really are and who you are inside. And I think for me, it was in that moment, I realized that I need to take care of the people close to me. And I'm not saying in that moment that I just snapped and I was like, I'm going to do what's right. It wasn't really like that, but it was more of I made a hard choice. And as I moved down that road, I moved closer to where I knew divinely I needed to go. And I think that's where it's leading me to now. I don't even think I'm there yet. I don't even think when we die, we achieve that. I think we just move in this positive path that God's laid out for us. And if we move in that path, I think that we will affect people around us, and it's hopefully in a positive way. And I think that's where what I took from the whole Freemason journey that I went on. And for me, I can honestly say, being on the other side of it, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. Now, those things that people say that are in Freemasonry absolutely exist. I mean, I've got Morals and Dogma right here from Albert Pike on my bookshelf. I'm telling you, it's built on Luciferian doctrine. None of that's not true. And to say that the people at the top aren't running things would also not be true. But what I'm saying is it's a small percentage. It's just like the elites in the world that run things. It's such a small percentage. This is just the massive umbrella that it's all hiding under.
It sounds like it's a social network pretty much. And
Absolutely.
From there, you can kind of meet people, or you could, just meet friends. Kind of shit.
Yeah. Like a social climbing network with people who just use each other for resources, what it sounds like. But I'm sure there's other people there with like ulterior motives, just like I'm going to use this person. That's kind of like where we can talk about, maybe that's where the dark side of this whole thing begins, because we can chalk it up saying, Freemasonry is really just a network where people can, like you said, get to know each other, trade. But like I said, there could be someone with that ulterior motive that brings in that dark aspect where all these people come. It's like, oh no, Freemasonry is dark,
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
How is it regulated? Like, I mean, without incriminating yourself, like if there's a predator in there, right? Like there's a bad egg in Freemasonry that's kind of scouting for people that are vulnerable to, like you, hungry for knowledge, right? Do those people get regulated, or is that just free game since you're in the fraternity type of thing?
From what I can tell, man, most of those guys that are looking for people that want to get to that level know that it's not even, I don't think it's even a predator system so much as the guys that are looking, like myself, you're looking for those guys to open the gates. So at that point, it's just more of the network, right? It's the network within the network that you're looking for. So yeah, you've got that overarching network like you were just talking about, but then you got this other hidden network that works behind it. So I do think that that's kind of how, from what I've seen, how it operates. I mean, there are guys that get in there that don't see any of that, man, that are good people. And I would say all the guys that I knew in there, at least on the surface, were good guys. You know what I mean? There were some, like I said, I knew that there was something else there. I didn't get to explore that because of those crossroads I came to in my life. I didn't get to explore as much as I wanted to, but I knew the opportunities were there if I talked to certain people. But I would say, yeah, most of those guys are just good dudes, man, and they're just trying to help people. I could say that where the lodge was situated, it was situated in the projects, and they did that by design because most of the kids in the projects didn't have things for school, and we used to make school bags for them every year and have school supplies and everything else. We had cookouts like every other weekend where we were cooking for people. Holidays came around, we're deep frying turkeys, we're doing whatever and handing them out. You know what I mean? And I get it. Some of that is for image because Freemasonry, a long time ago was getting a real bad rep in the early 1900s. So they did start doing a lot of this stuff to change the image of what they do. But it doesn't change the fact that it's positive on the neighborhoods and positive to the people around them. And I can say the majority of the guys doing it are doing it for good reasons. They're not doing it because they're trying to cover up what they're doing in secret. They legitimately are trying to help people. And I do think that there's that part that's missing when people look at Freemasonry. They look at it as just this evil thing that everybody that's involved is evil. That's not the case at all. I can say that men can be deceived into thinking that the organization is about one thing and it's not, when behind the scenes there is an overarching occult network of guys not doing things that are right by people. But at the base level, most guys, man, it's just a social network, and it's just a way to try to get a little bit ahead in life and help people.
Man, how do we know the Freemasons didn't send you here to tell us that?
No. Quick question.
I'm no longer practicing, so there's that.
Okay.
Where the fuck did you work, bro? All these Freemasons just walking in with their symbols there.
I thought they were supposed to be more low key, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be low key. I mean, there's a lot of guys that'll rock jewelry. Now, one thing I was taught when I got in is if you're rocking the jewelry or rocking anything with those symbols on it, you can get tried by people that are, it's very much like a gang, the guys will try you up. I know guys that got their chain snatched because they were wearing the wrong thing and they knew they weren't that. And it's a little bit deeper than being in the Bloods and Crips. This is a whole different network. So
like
these guys are putting up with, well, listen, I remember getting a polo. I wanted a polo with the lodge number and everything on it. And they had to send me to a specific place that would make it. And the guy that made it was a Freemason, but he's from another lodge, but it was a connected lodge. And I had to go in there and basically, he asked me a bunch of questions, man, before he would do it. It was not, first off, he was a black dude and I'm a white dude coming in saying I'm a part of this black lodge. So he's already looking at me like, what? And then he's looking at me like, this guy's got some balls. If he is lying, he's got some balls. But then, I told him everything. Listen, I was in, and I knew all the guys. So I started like breaking it down. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, oh, okay. Oh, I think he said, oh, you're the guy. You're that guy. Word had already got out. So I remember he made the polo for me. So you'll see guys rocking the stuff a lot, or more subtly, you'll see the rings, right? You'll see guys rocking rings, though. It'll be like on their right hand, on their right ring finger. You'll see the rings. So that's more probably what you'll see than anything. But you might see a chain or a necklace, depending on the person.
Have you seen that leaked initiation ritual, I guess, that's been circling, and people were talking that this is the free, like some dude was like naked, but then I saw in like, kind of just diving into it, there's people saying that must be that lodge because we don't do shit like that. So.
And every lodge is different. I can tell you this right now. There are lodges that are super benign. You're just going through bookwork, and it's a fairly easy process. Then you've got other lodges that it's way more fraternity style that you would see in college, where they're really pushing your buttons. And I can say the lodge I went through was one of those. It was absolutely the worst, one of the worst lodges to go through. Like, you had to really have your head screwed on straight to get through that lodge. They wanted to break you. They did not want you to become a part of that lodge, because if you made it, then you deserve to be there. And I remember I got a huge reputation just in front of other lodges for going through it, because they would go to the other lodges to become Freemason because they didn't want to go through that one, because they knew the stories coming out of it, and they're like, I don't want to do that. So you built a reputation up going through the lodge that I went to too. But I wanted that. I wanted to go through the toughest possible way to get to that. And I did. So, for me, it was at the time, it was definitely a big notch on my belt to get through that and be able to say that, man, I was the only white dude to ever go through here, and I had to go through hell to get it. So you're right, though. Absolutely right. When you said every single lodge is different. I got a buddy of mine. He's a Freemason. None of that, man. It was like a cakewalk. Most of them are. So again, what you saw, and I haven't seen the video, so I couldn't tell you if it was legit or not as far as the rituals go, but it could be for that specific lodge. That's what they do there, because everything's different. It's like the rites may be the same, but it's not, the process is not always the same too.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm glad we dove into Freemasonry, because that what you said was very informative and kind of gives us the right light, because, we talk about a lot of secret societies and we kind of have our ideas of how they operate. And we had a guest who is a Freemason, and we tried asking that person, what's about it. And like, that person was pretty tight-lipped about it. So we're like, I was like, blink 3 times if you're in trouble,
Right.
Because they were like very tight. It was like, no, it's not bad. I was like, that's it. But I'm glad that you were able to share with us the information that you could.
One more question about Freemason.
Yeah.
There's a myth, or there's a saying that it's a myth to have female Freemasons.
Yeah, they're not allowed. True? Yeah,
not allowed.
So not in legitimate Freemasonry, they're not allowed. You will see female Freemasons, but that is a lodge system that is outside of the order that comes down from England. Unless you have paperwork from England, you're not a legitimate lodge. So you will see that a lot, where women will say they're Freemasons, or they'll go through a Freemason process. And listen, they may have the rights and everything. They may be legitimate rights that they have, because you can get a hold of books. I mean, you can have books made. You could do the rituals. It doesn't mean that you can't get a hold of the same rituals. You can, but women are not allowed. And you are not recognized as a legitimate Freemason. Now, that could change at some point, but it has not changed as of yet. And that comes down from England. Unless you have your paperwork from England. And I remember specifically one of the first things they told me when I came through there, unless a lodge has this paperwork, do not talk to them. Do not share any symbols with them or anything else, because they're not real. He's like, you will find lodges with signage out front and everything, but they're not recognized as a legitimate lodge under the umbrella from England. And that's the thing with Prince Hall Freemasonry and mainstream Freemasonry. They both are under that same umbrella. Freemasonry was created around the Revolutionary War with Prince Hall, who was the first black man to become a Freemason. So that's where this whole Prince Hall idea came from, the Prince Hall Freemasons, or PHA, which they call Prince Hall affiliated. You'll see that a lot, PHA everywhere. That's where that comes from. Now, what women are allowed to do is become an Eastern Star. That's completely different. So you'll see like the 6-pointed star, and you'll see that on the back of people's vehicles. Those are the Order of the Eastern Stars. These are the women's version of Freemasons. Now that is ordained, and they are allowed to fellowship with the brothers in the lodge and have social events and all that kind of stuff. So that is a legitimate group that women are allowed to be a part of. But as far as an actual Freemason, if a woman tells you she's a Freemason, she's not in an accredited lodge. She may have gone through a lodge and gone through the same process that I did, but it doesn't make her an accredited Freemason at that point. So that's just a fact.
She got her membership from Temu.
Yeah.
Dang.
Oh, man.
Well, that's good to know. Because we were wondering, because we had someone say, "Oh, I'm a Freemason," and I was like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know women were allowed in there, but that's cool." But yeah, man. So I kind of wanted to transition us from Freemasonry because I felt like you dropped a lot for us. So Jerizi, I was actually telling me that you do cryptid hunting, and but before we get there, I actually wanted to ask you, because I was doing some research on Nephilim. Isn't that just giants, or is that like a more biblical meaning for giants?
So Nephilim are the products of fallen entities or fallen angels coming down and having sexual relations with women, which most people think was on Mount Hermon, and they created these Nephilim, or the giants. So yes, Nephilim are considered giants. Now, when we start breaking down all the different types of Nephilim in the Bible, because there's a lot of different ones, Nephilim's just the overarching name. And I tend to use Nephilim for that first generation. These are the guys that they said were in like the 30-foot to 45-foot range early on. So these are, you could call any giant a Nephilim, and that would be right, because it is an overarching term. But you have other names that show up even after the deluge or after the flood, which would also be considered Nephilim as well. You got the Raphaim, you've got the Anakim, the Emims, the Zumims. You got all these different types that come after the flood, and those are going to be anywhere from 10 feet to 20 feet, 25 feet. You're going to see a large range, like Goliath. He was said to be like 10, 11 feet tall. Og in the Bible was said to be anywhere from 10 to 13 feet. You've got some of the other giants that are spoken about, probably in the 15-foot range. So Nephilim is the product of these fallen angels having sexual relations with women. Now, if you think they are actually having sex with them, or it was some sort of DNA manipulation or DNA splicing, that's a possibility too. Maybe they were doing it in a different dimension. There's that possibility as well. I'm open to all of them, but we do know that angels themselves, and this is biblical, they can shapeshift. So we know that they could shapeshift into men or women. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they were actually having sex with these women and creating these Nephilim. Now, to say, well, how are they having these giant babies? That's a whole other discussion. And I could even tie that into alien abductions now, and how women are becoming pregnant and these babies go missing after 3 months. They're being removed. I think, honestly, that's what's happening, or happened back then too. Babies were removed, or maybe even early on, they were just allowing these women to die from childbirth, which is a huge possibility too.
Man, so obviously it's biblical, right? Nephilims are biblical.
I can even quote the scripture for you. So
Second Samuel? Oh, there's Genesis.
6. So Genesis, I'll even start with Genesis 6:1 and get to Genesis 4. But it's when man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were in the earth in those days. And so afterward, when the sons of God, which are angels, because you'll see this happen in the Bible, where the sons of God can be used for people who follow God, or can be used in context as angelic beings. And in this context, is being used as angelic beings. When the sons of God came into the daughters of man and they bore children to them, these were the mighty men who were the men of old, the men of renown. So these mighty men, the word is Gibborim or Jaborim in the Hebrew, and it also is interchanged throughout the Bible as meaning giants themselves. So in this specific verse, this is the first time that giants are talked about in the Bible. Not to say that giants aren't talked about a ton more in the Bible, which we could talk about today if we have the time, but that is specific to the Nephilim being used in the Bible.
They also mentioned 6 fingers and 6 toes, correct? And 2 Samuel, I forget which one. So there's real descriptive characteristics for the Nephilim in the Bible.
Correct. And it really just depends on, the where we get the 6 fingers and 6 toes, and you just talked about it. Mm-hmm. It's spoken about one time in the Bible, but when people have found giant bones over the years, they have had 6 fingers and 6 toes. So that's come into play as well, especially in the late 1800s when a lot of giant bones were being dug up. And this was during the Bone Wars era of dinosaur bones being found. So during this Bone Wars era, it was really wild, right? You had these paleontologists fighting each other over these bones and trying to, this is when you found a lot of dinosaurs later on in like the 1950s, 1960s weren't real, that they were actually pieced together from other dinosaur bones. Like the Brachiosaurus isn't a real dinosaur. Everybody thought that it was for so long. They even still make it as a toy for kids to play with. It's not a real dinosaur. And this is coming from mainstream science. It was pieced together from 2 different dinosaurs because, and I forgot both the guys' names just off the top of my head, they were fighting each other for who could get the most dinosaur bones to sell, to get it in the museums. So it was a big fame race for these 2 guys, right? During that time, there's a lot of stuff being dug up throughout the United States, and a lot of giant bones were found. You can actually dig around online, and you can find a lot of these articles in these old newspapers with pictures of these giant bones. They're like 7, 8, 9 feet tall, all throughout Northern America. The funny thing is all these bones go missing. Magically enough, they're always picked up by a group called the Smithsonian, and then they just go disappearing. So this is a constant theme. And the joke is always like, what does the Smithsonian have in some random bunker somewhere? I mean, who knows, right? I mean, the thing about it is with people ask, well, why would they want it hidden? Why do they want these Nephilim bones hidden, these giant bones hidden? Because it disrupts the idea of evolution at that point. Because if giant bones come out, that would be the upper echelon of evolution. That would be where we would go to next. Well, if you're showing giant bones, that means we're regressing, we're de-evolving at that point. So it disrupts this whole theory that Charles Darwin came out with, by the way, was a Freemason. His father was documented as a Freemason in England, and his son was also documented as a Freemason. He just wasn't. And you'll find this a lot with Freemasons. They'll have their name removed from the books that you can see if they're holding some sort of special allotment that they need them to do, because that way they're not tied to it on paper. So funny enough, Charles Darwin comes out with this theory of evolution, which to this day, it's still called a theory. It's not a fact, even though it's taught as fact in all of our institutions. And I do believe in a form of evolution. I do believe in adaptive evolution. I think things adapt to their environment. I think you'll see that throughout time where animals will get webbed feet and people will change skin tone depending on their environment. All these kind of things can happen. I just don't believe, and I come from a biblical basis, that things like an entire type of thing is changing into another thing. I just don't think there's enough evidence in our bone system, all the bones that we found in archaeology to prove that. There's just not enough that's showing like, hey, there's this alligator changing into a bird or vice versa. We don't have those significant things. We have a lot of these quote unquote missing links that they say that are that, but is it very similar to what was happening in the Bone Wars, where they just pieced something together and put it in front of us and said that this is this? I just think that's why they want giant bones hidden. And I think that that's just my personal opinion on why giant bones are hidden. But yes, the Nephilim, and I know I went on a full circle there about Bone Wars, but
no, that was great.
Nephilim are the products of fallen angels having sex with women, and that's per the Bible.
Man, real quick, that story about the Brachiosaurus, that's fucking hilarious because it's like, you build the body and you're at the neck and you're just like, let me put another one. Let me put another one.
And I honestly think it was a different head. I want to say it was like a brontosaurus head or something like that. And again, I did some deep dives, but it's been a while since I looked into the Bone Wars. But they actually swapped the heads out, and it was a completely different head. But it created a dinosaur that people still talk about now. That's not an accredited dinosaur. It's not real.
Littlefoot, bro. That's Littlefoot.
I'm gonna flip my nephew's world upside down now because he's super into dinosaurs right now. And I'm gonna tell him like, hey, that's not real. It's like, what do you mean? So
I got a crazier one for you about what I think that dinosaurs actually were. So I am, and I hate labels, but I would say the best way to describe what I think about the Earth, I'm an old Earth creationist. So I think the Earth's very old. I think we're looking at billions of years. I think that the deluge or the flood that people know about was just one flood. I think there was a flood before that, before Adam was created. I think that there was a whole other race of people, pre-Adamites. I think that there were angel civilizations that were all across the Earth and maybe other planets. I don't know how people feel about flat Earth and all that, but I'll just say other planets for lack of whatever you want to think it is. We'll just say it's out past the wall then if you don't believe they're planets. But at the end of the day, I think the Earth's that old. And I think, and I've heard some theologians talk about this that do deep dives on old Earth and Nephilim. It's a very big precedent that dinosaurs were actually created or DNA spliced by fallen entities to use to avatar in battle. So I think that we don't really know what dinosaurs looked like with skin and flesh. So they could have been more in the dragon range or dragon type of beings that they used. And the thought process is a lot of these dinosaurs had small brains, so they were easy to manipulate. So if a fallen entity could avatar them, they wouldn't have to specifically be in battle. They could just basically puppeteer these things in these angel wars that were going on across the world.
Wild. That's fucking crazy, bro.
That's one of the crazier things that I still think about dinosaurs. Like, yeah, we have all these drawings, but none of them could be very accurate. What if they had fur? We wouldn't know.
We wouldn't know. Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you, man. We don't really know what they are, but that was probably one of the wildest theories I've heard of, and I like it. And I do it to piss off some of my friends who are big dinosaur fans. So I'm always like, a buddy of mine, who, by the way, you should guys have on the show, Justin and Jay from Cryptids of the Corn. They're absolutely
of the corn.
The best cryptid guys you could ever have on the show. Justin's an actual biologist, but he also believes in all of the weird stuff, fairies and Nephilim and everything else, but he can break it down from a scientific level legitimately. But he and I butt heads about dinosaurs all the time, and I do it just to make him mad. I always talk about they were created by fallen angels, man. They're not these nice things that you think they are.
Damn. So it sounds like you think dinosaurs are more like Pokemon, but you can just kind of
possess. It's a good way to put it. Yeah, you got to catch them all, right?
That's what that guy was doing, making a Brachiosaurus.
that actually that brings me to this point. Nephilim, are they just specifically giants? Because I did a deep dive, and there seems to be different characteristics of them. You said they could shapeshift, so
I could go for hours on the Nephilim bloodlines and what has spawned out of Nephilim and what the fallen angels have done just to creation itself. I mean, you look at books like apocryphal books like Jasher and Jubilees, where they actually talk about fallen entities manipulating everything around them, not only animals, but plant life as well. It was all about disrupting God's creation to the fullest. So it wasn't just disrupting this human line that they knew that Jesus would come from. That was the whole point. They wanted to disrupt the DNA so that Jesus would be corrupted. That was their whole point. if you look in scripture right before the flood, it said that Noah was perfect in his generation. It never meant that Noah was a perfect human being, like he didn't make mistakes. It meant that his DNA was perfect. That's why he got on the ark. And that's why when he got off the ark, his bloodline was still secure for Jesus to come from. So their whole purpose was to manipulate everything around them. So if we're looking at some of these cryptids, they could possibly be from Nephilim bloodlines as well. You could look at anything for that matter. I mean, I think before the flood, the technology was beyond what it is now. I think that you look at, man, think about it. Think about all the pyramids that are still hidden throughout the earth right now. I mean, there's said to be pyramids in the Smoky Mountains, man. I mean, there's pyramids all across North America that are hidden in these mountain ranges. What's in there? What kind of technology was available to these people before the flood? And I'm not saying that the technology was better in the sense of technology we could understand. It could be different technology, right? So it could be more mental, telekinesis, some of these other things that these people were able to tap into from an alchemical sense or alchemical mind frame, which I think that that's what you got to start looking at, because we know that the fallen entities traded with the human men to get access to the women. So this is talked about in the book of Enoch, where they were trading all manner of technology, including alchemy, to human men to get access to the women to create these Nephilim. But that also means that they were corrupting something that was already good. So I think Adam's bloodline, you've got Seth that comes from that. You got Enoch that comes from that. You got Noah that comes from that. I think they all had access to what, for lack of a better word, alchemy that they could use also. I mean, these guys lived for a extremely long period of time. So I think that they had access to what we would think is magic, but it was just normal life for them because they were using, what do they say? We use 10% of our brains right now. What if you were using 100% of your brain and able to access those spiritual data points that we're not able to now because we're so dumbed down with everything around us, the fluoride, all the things that we consume daily, the little phones, our portals that we stare at all day to, suck our, brain cells away. Imagine not having that and having access to something else.
It's like, obviously, if you created a being, you just give them the free trial brain. You don't give them the full
free
capacity.
trial. I like it though, the free trial brain. I've actually
free
joked
AOL
with people about that.
The demo,
dial up.
the demo version.
Oh, I got an AOL disc. I got a month trial right here. I'm gonna go get some chat rooms.
Yeah, man. It's funny and interesting too. It's something recently I heard about pyramids. Like, as much effort it takes to make pyramids, they didn't put windows in that motherfucker. So if you're gonna carry a tomb over there, like, how do you work that out? Like, you didn't think someone thought of that? Like, so it's obviously not, built for a tomb because it's not functional for that.
I mean,
so
listen,
it's something interesting to think about.
Aleister Crowley locked himself in a pyramid for 3 days so he could connect with the spirit Iowas, which he auto-wrote the book of the law with. So he knew that there was a significance of being inside of a pyramid and being able to connect to entities, which Iowas was the precursor to Lamb, which is our first drawing of what the gray entities that abduct people look like now. So if you think about it, the pyramids have always been used throughout history as some sort of, it has some sort of religious connotation to it. There's something to these pyramids, good or bad, but something's connected to them that is bigger than just being a tomb. I can tell you that.
So let me just bring our conversation full circle. Pyramids. The Freemasons have a real distinctive symbol, and it's that eye with the triangle. Is there any power to that, or is that just an all-seeing eye we see above symbol? Because I heard about the Kozyrov mirror, and I heard that symbol was also prevalent in there. So
it actually, it was. And I did a live show several months ago, and these guys, Hollow Sky, they actually did a full presentation on that mirror, which was really interesting. Shout out to those guys. But the company line is the eye of God. It's called the eye of providence. So it's nothing bad, guys. Just relax. It's don't worry about it. If you see it, it's nothing bad. Yeah, it's nothing bad at all. but yeah, it actually is very Luciferian. And we were just talking about Albert Pike and the book he wrote, Morals and Dogma. And he was a 33rd degree Freemason who broke down this doctrine in the Eye of Providence and the Eye of the Pyramid. It was a big part of that. So in just to break it down in the very simplest terms, the eye is Lucifer, and the rest of the pyramid is what trickles down from that. So if you can look at it like a structure, a hierarchy of structure, you've got the bricks underneath him, which are your ultra elites. Some people think the 13 bloodlines. I do believe in the 13 bloodlines. I just don't think it's some reptilian race. However, I do believe in reptilians too. I think they are from a Nephilim bloodline. And a guy that does crazy deep dives on Nephilim, Gary Wayne, he broke down they're of what they call the salamander race. They were part of this fairy bloodline of the bloodline of Isis. So there's two bloodlines. You got bloodline of the dragon and the fairy bloodlines of these Nephilim. And this fairy bloodline is what they call the matriarchal bloodline, and that's where you're going to get like your fairies that you've seen throughout history, your elementals. That's where your reptilians are going to come from. Your bloodline of the dragon or the patriarchal bloodline is where you're going to see what they think is where the Antichrist is going to come from. He'll come from that bloodline because it's set, because he's got to mimic what Christ did. So his whole thing is to mimic that all the way out. And to your point earlier, of there being different types of Nephilim, they aren't just giants. And I think that what they're doing now, these fallen entities in a different dimension, they are creating the perfect Nephilim. And I think what they want to present to us is a Nephilim that looks a lot like us, not super tall, maybe have 6 fingers or something differentiating, but its abilities are going to be far beyond what we could do. Like, say, the ability to connect with somebody mentally with telepathy, or be able to move things around with their mind openly, to where it is basically magic. And I think they're going to show us that and then say, hey, by the way, you can become this god too if you just take this that we need you to take, and you can actually get to this next level of evolution. So I think that's kind of the point. I think they're tinkering, and I think that's where you're seeing throughout history a lot of these weird humanoid-like cryptids popping up here and there. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're working on this. And if you listen to a lot of people's abduction stories, they are taken to underground facilities where they see these things. They see these giants. They see these things being created. And a lot of these women that are abducted, they see the babies taken out of them, and they see regular humans working alongside these great entities and other fallen entities, helping create this stuff. So they are working with governments. Like, let's make that clear that they're doing the same thing they did in the book of Enoch and in Genesis. They're just doing it in a different way now. They're presenting themselves as these aliens, these helpers. Oh, we've been always helping you from afar. We're these Anunnaki. I'm going to tell you right now, this is what we do. I just think that they're just rebranding. I think every so often they rebrand. It's just like with anybody that wants a new rebrand to get a fresh start. I just think that's what fallen angels have done throughout the centuries, man. They just rebrand.
That makes a lot of sense, man.
I'm just rebranding.
doing a deep dive in Nephilim, I did come across something really interesting, and the connection between Nephilims and clowns. Have you came across any of that? And
there's a guy that talks about that. I know the guy. I don't know him that well. I've never talked to him personally, but I have heard the story about it. I haven't done a deep enough dive on it myself to have an idea either way. I think it would have to be something that I would need to dig into to say, hey, I think there's some credence to it. My only caveat to it is it can't be all Nephilim, because we know throughout history and all cultures, there's all manner and races of Nephilim as far as like skin tone and skin color. So they weren't all redheaded giants. Like, that may have been a predominant theme that you saw in certain areas, but it wasn't across the entire world. It wasn't. I mean, we know that just from hieroglyphs in South America. So that's a fact. So whereas I think there could be the imagery came from the cannibalism that those, especially the early Nephilim, caused. Because here's the thing, we know cannibalism existed in Nephilim cultures. Now, we don't know how many were a part of it or not. And I've done some stupid deep dives on my theory of good Nephilim. And I think there's precedent in the Bible of there being Nephilim that turned from their evil ways and actually rolled with Yahweh and King David. So I've done some crazy deep dives on that too. But that's talked about in the Book of Giants, which is also an apocryphal book. And you'll see it paired with the Book of Enoch a lot, the Book of Giants. Now, interesting enough, in this Book of Giants, Mahaway, which is one of the giants, he has these prophetic dreams of the impending flood coming. He knows it's coming. He knows they're going to die. So he talks to Gilgamesh, who's another one of the giants, and they have this talk together about, with the other giants of what they should do. So they think well, we should talk to Enoch. He's the closest to God. He walks with God. He's known throughout the world in that time as the closest to God. So they go to Enoch. Enoch's like, look, I'm going to come back with the answer. So he goes, talks to God, comes back to him with 2 tablets. He said, this tablet's for you, this tablet's for your fathers, which were the fallen entities. So they go back, they read the first tablet, and it basically tells them, yes, the earth's going to be destroyed by flood. They're doomed, right? Well, they read the second tablet, and that tablet actually tells the fallen entities they're going to be locked away in this, basically this lake of fire, which that's where most people think the first round of fallen angels went to, the ones that corrupted God's creation. They're thrown in this lake of fire until the book of Revelation opens up with all the craziness there, and then they're released. So they see that, but it says that if they repent, the giants repent, they can be saved. Enoch tells them this. So they're actually happy. Half the giants decide that they want to do what's right. The other half are still happy being cannibals and doing whatever else. Azazel and some of the other fallen entities are locked away. Some of the giants that decided to turn from their evil ways end up going back because they're angry that their father's locked up, but still some of them remain that they want to do what's right. So there ends up what they call the giant wars that happen before Noah gets on the ark. So there's like an overarching story of these giant wars that happen. So that's just one story. I can even break down David, from the story of David and Goliath. He's got a elite group of like Navy SEALs or Marine Corps top level guys that call David's mighty men. And some of those guys are actually hybrids or Nephilim themselves. So they actually turned on their kind and started rolling with David's elite assassin group that were taking out giants in the hills and giants from other nations.
Man, so I had this really deep spiritual question about, it's obvious that angels can fall and become demons, but can demons, repent and become angels again? And, we had this discussion about they can try to repent, but they may never be forgiven and become angels again. But after listening to what you're saying, it's pretty much Hercules' story. He fucked up and he's trying to kind of, redeem himself, doing the 12 rites or whatever that he has to do to regain godship or whatever.
And I think a lot of those stories in Greek mythology and Sumerian mythology, all these places have levels of truth to them for sure. Now, I think some of it was taught by these fallen entities, these Elohim gods that presented themselves. And I think Zeus existed. I think all these gods did exist in some format. I don't know if it's the format that we read on the pages, but I do think that there's a possibility that the Herculean story has some truth to it. Now, I want to say about the fallen angels or demons. So from my research, demonic entities and fallen angels are 2 different things. Demonic entities are actually the spirits of the Nephilim that died, that have no place to go, that never repented. So those spirits are the ones that are able to inhabit people after the flood. So those demonic entities are actually spirits of dead Nephilim that never repented before they died. So if you look at that part of it, and you can even look into Isaiah where it talks about the Rapha, or the spirits of the dead coming out from the water or place of death and having no place to go. That's what they're talking about, these spirits of the Nephilim. So most people will tell you that. I just think that fallen entities can't possess people where demonic entities can, if you allow them. So I think that fallen angels can avatar, but they can't possess people. Whereas it makes sense, right? If you had a body and you don't have a body anymore, you're looking for something to host. I also think that gray aliens are meat sacks that are created in conjunction with fallen entities and governments as host bodies for these Nephilim spirits to inhabit, to use to abduct people too. That's why they seem so real, because when you touch them, because they are real, at least in a physical format.
I see.
Man. Huh. So we have a homie in our group. His name is Danny. Shout out to Danny. He's always it's not that deep, you guys are going too deep. But let me just tie this in before we wrap up. You mentioned Gilgamesh. First of all, before I keep going, Nephilim or not?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Nephilim. Gilgamesh, I said on this podcast previously, before in a few episodes, Gilgamesh was mentioned in Hillary Clinton's leaked emails. Mm-hmm. They talked about the resurrection chamber. Okay. I mentioned 6 fingers, 6 toes. I also said this on our podcast previously. I think Oprah is a fucking Nephilim. She's got 6 toes. You mentioned shapeshifters. So, maybe she's shapeshifting into a human when in camera, but that toe she can't seem to hide. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, Danny Garcia, the boxer, got a 6 toe.
So my question to you, Joel, before we wrap this up and take it home, do you think that, well, first of all, Iran or Iraq, I think it's Iraq or Iran, if I get this wrong, my bad, is Sumer, right? We just changed the label of it. It's Sumeria.
Just like rebranding, like anything else.
Rebranding, like you said. So I have this hypothesis that we're going to war because we're trying to retrieve ancient relics and possibly fucking get Gilgamesh, if he's out there. Do you think that that's humans trying to regain those relics, or do you think those are hybrid Nephilims trying to regain their family kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Both. If you look at, that's such a huge, wow. You can start back with the Bush era, the old Bush, not even George W. When he started his war, you could say it wasn't over oil, it was over technology and over, Nephilim tech that they were trying to get to. There's a lot of stories about that. All these wars, I think, have an undertone of the occult and things they're trying to unravel, right? You could look at these elites, right? You could look at the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. People bring up these names. I think they're kind of more of the front men, right? They're not the names that you hear in secret, like the Orsini's and all these other names that are behind the scenes, the real power. And not to say the Rothschilds don't have real power, they do. I just think they're the front men that they put out there to take the hits, like so everybody can point a finger and say that's the evil guy right there. The best part, here's the best part, right? The best part about a lot of these groups, they're presented as Jewish. They're not actually Jewish. They're actually from these Khazarian mafias that have ruled over these areas that integrated into Judaism. They're not actually Jewish. So when people are screaming, I really hate it. When people are screaming against the Jews, it's not the Jews that you're mad at, man. It's this whole other Nephilim bloodline that came through the Khazarians. You really just need to be screaming at the Nephilim, because no race of people is actively trying to take you out. That's stupid. And that's the part, and that's where wars start, right? Because people start fighting over race and ideologies and all these things. They're fighting each other, and that's what we're so good at doing. We're so good at dumbing ourselves down and fighting each other and not pointing the fingers at the people that we need to be pointing them at, because they're really good at puppeteering us to get angry at each other over stupidness, man. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Cook, Joel. You're cooking right now, man.
Definitely.
You mentioned the truther community, and I just want to say this because it's something I've always talked about. And when Juan's been on this podcast, we always laugh about how they're becoming who they were trying to fight against.
Absolutely.
The thing about the truther community is the reason you're in the truther community is because the truth you used to believe in ended up being false. Now you're going to say the truth you found is the truth. I don't get it, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, just look at it like that.
Dude, it's so crazy.
They're rebranding.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. A lot of these guys in the truther community, they really want to be the elites. They want to have the secret knowledge that nobody else has. So if they can pinpoint at somebody else, say, no, it's actually this. And it's like, dude, we're talking about theories here. We're theorizing. Listen, I work in a biblical space with biblical scholars and people that read the Bible. I get it probably the worst than anybody, man. I mean, you talk about in the Christian sphere, people get up in arms, man. I mean, as well as my theory of good Nephilim's done, man, you talk about people want to burn me at the stake for talking about they don't have souls. How could they be redeemed? And it's like, bro, you're talking about stuff that's not even scriptural that you could point to and say that that's a fact. And matter of fact, let me tell you something about the Bible. The Bible was written for us to commune with God and to connect with our neighbor. That's basically it. There's some really cool stuff in there. Don't get me wrong, but all that stuff wasn't broke down specifically. Like, so you can't sit here and say, well, this is wrong or this, when you don't know. Like, none of us know. Right. We're just theorizing, and it's great to theorize, and I absolutely enjoy it, and I do tons of deep dives on tons of topics. But at the end of the day, I can't tell you 100% that I know something. I say, hey, this is what I believe, but I can't tell you 100%. And I have the right to change that if I say it's a theory as well. Once you lock yourself in to a belief system and you say, this is the hill I'm going to die on, you're screwed if it's a theory. Because what if knowledge comes out later? I'll tell you a good one. Early on, I thought the book of Enoch was not written by good Enoch. I still don't think totally, but I do think there were parts of it that were written by the good Enoch, but I think there was an evil Enoch, which there isn't scripturally. The first son of Cain, his name was Enoch too. So I think that book was infiltrated a little bit because there are some disparities between it and the Bible. And I know that'll get people up in arms too, but that's my opinion. Now, I used to think the whole book. Now I've done deeper dives and I've changed my mind frame on it. Just like I used to think the Anunnaki were the Nephilim. I don't think so. I think the Anunnaki were fallen angels because we hear about the Anunnaki creating and splicing and making the Agigi and all these other different pre-Adamite men. I think those were fallen entities, the deeper I dug on it. But you'll hear some guys that'll die on the sword of the Anunnaki were Nephilim. And it's like, that's cool, man. I can't tell you specifically. I can just say that over time, my mind frames change. It's like Bigfoot, right? People think that Bigfoot is flesh and blood. There are some guys that will die on that hill, but there's been countless thousands of stories of people seeing Bigfoot moving in and out of dimensions, having orbs move around them, all kind of paranormal activity. You can't tell me those people are lying. They saw it. So it's just funny, man. Everybody's got the real truth, but nobody's willing to actually seek the truth. And that's the problem, because we can't sit here and have a conversation with somebody that thinks differently than you. I can all day because I can glean from that person. I guarantee they're going to say a few things. I'm like, man, I didn't think about that. Like, that's actually a good way of thinking about it. Okay, I might change my mentality. Let me dig in this a little bit and see what I'm thinking about this. Cool. There may be some things that you are dead set on. You're like, you know what? This is what I believe. And when people speak differently about it, you can take it in, be nice to them, listen to them, understand it. But it may also solidify what you already think. Or like, you know, I still think what I think. I think that helped me think that too. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But we don't need to sit here and badger each other constantly and beat each other over the head about theories. Guys, we're talking about theories here. Bro, we got people fighting over giants. Like, come on, man. Like, come on. Real
dinosaurs, bro. Man, I like to always say this too. I spoke about this on the previous podcast. I love conspiracy theories, but I don't like to label myself as conspiracy theorist or a conspiracy theorist. I like to view it more of, I like deep spirituality. And at the end of the day, I feel like these conspiracy theories are gateways into the spiritual warfare. Agreed. Right? If you look into it, it really ties back to biblical stuff. And like you said, I feel like even before the Bible was written, I feel like these things were going on. It was just the Bible that finally said, hey, and if everything gets wiped out, someone needs to rewrite the Bible type of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, as much as people get caught talking about dinosaurs and giants, like we're kind of fighting about surface level things. You know what I mean? Because these giants and these dinosaurs are there to harvest your soul, bro. You know what I mean? It is that deep. It is that deep.
It is that deep. And I always joke about that too, man, because I'm a big Nephilim guy and I can tell you a lot about them. But, you know, and I think that the reason they were created and who's running things behind the scenes all stems from that. I could tell you a million ways how it does. But if you don't think that way, that's cool, man. Yeah. Just know that as long as you and I can agree on the fact that, man, something ain't right, then we're in the same boat. You know what I mean? And even if we're not, here's the other part, the caveat to the people in the truther community. Even the people who you call sheep, you should treat with respect. You should look at them, not dehumanize them, not look at them as lesser than you, because there was a point in time where you thought like that too. And I think that that's another thing that's lost on in this community, man. We see, especially during 2020, all the craziness that ensued all the way to now. It was easy for a lot of us to get caught up in it and be angry at people, right? But listen, most of those people did what they thought was best, and they didn't do it out of a hateful heart, even if it caused them to do some hateful things. And we have to think that way, man, because that's what you were just talking about, energy harvesting. That's what they're doing. They're harvesting off that negative energy that we're creating amongst ourselves.
Facts.
And with the truther community, I just want to, before we wrap it up, it's just, why are you going to get mad at sheep or anything? I mean, you believe in, like you said, theories.
Yeah.
You just know more theories than the sheep do. And, it doesn't make you better than them. I mean, like you said, our job is to inform and be like a library for these people. And it's up to them how they want to absorb it. So
conspiracy theories, unless it's rebranded to conspiracy truths. It's conspiracy theories still, guys, as far as I'm concerned.
We're going under a rebrand over here.
I love that shit, man. Joel Thomas, thank you for coming on. Before we sign you out, I do have some rapid fire questions I wanted to ask you. Are you down?
Let's go.
All right. You wake up and the news says there's a zombie apocalypse. You look out the window and it's happening. What's your first move, bro?
Going for the guns.
Yeah, right. If you can catch any cryptid and raise it like a Pokemon, what are you choosing, man?
Bigfoot.
Okay. Now, what's the worst cryptid to come face to face with?
Have I actually come face to face with? Or
no, let's say you're in the woods, and what's the worst possible one to come across and be like, fuck, even if I have a gun, I was hoping not to run into you,
From all accounts, probably Dogman.
Dogman? Is Dogman Skinwalker? Are they linked or no?
No, now they can be, because like Skinwalkers can morph into a lot of different cryptids, but Dogman is its own thing. It's like a werewolf type, even though Lycan and Dogman are different. Dogman would be upright walking 7 to 9 foot humanoid dogs.
Bad.
Damn.
All right. So zombie apocalypse is happening. All right. Your phone, for some reason, can only play one album. Which album are you putting on your phone, my man?
Ooh, that's a really tough one, man. Wow. Oh my. Yeah, you know what? I'm probably putting my own music on, man, and I'm just gonna go out there and listen to myself while I'm blasting them.
Badass, bro. I love that answer, man. Joel Thomas, thank you for coming on the cave. Where can we find you outside of the cave, my man?
Best thing to do is go to Linktree/Joel Thomas Media. As a matter of fact, if you go to any platform, you can just type in Joel Thomas Media, whether it's IG, YouTube, X, any of the like. You can type in Joel Thomas Media. You'll find my stuff there. If you're looking for any of my music videos, you can go to YouTube, which is /Joel Thomas Media. And you can find any of my music on any streaming platform. So you can go to Spotify, Apple, Tidal. There's like 30 or 40 out there that have all my music. Also, I have 2 documentaries out right now where I do hunt cryptids for real. And I did go hunting Dogman, and I did go out to Skinwalker Ranch hunting down skinwalkers. So you can go to Amazon Prime or Tubi. There's several that you can go to and look for. The first film that I did, which was, let's see here, Expedition Dogman. I got it on the back wall right there. And nice. I just got the new film, which is called The Shape of Shadows. And that is the film where we went to hunt down skinwalkers. And we had some crazy experiences in both, where we did run up on some wild stuff. And you can go to Merkle.media to catch any of the films. I've got a new film coming out where we went out to Washington hunting down Bigfoot with Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles. He's a part of that film. That's huge. That's coming out in a couple months. And then I got another film coming out in the fall where we went to Kentucky and Tennessee hunting down everything from UFOs to Dogman to Bigfoot, and we found some of it for sure. So we definitely found some wild stuff that went down during that time, and we got a lot of it on camera. And if you're looking for us to showcase some UFOs that we found on camera, Shape of Shadows, we did catch at one point for an hour and a half 25 UFOs flying over the mesas in Utah above Skinwalker Ranch. So it's pretty wild.
Jeez, man, check out Agartha. That's my song. I like Psyop. UFOs and weather balloons. Made me think of that one, man. And you have that was Joel's Psalms. That one is really fucking good.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that meant a lot to me, and that's actually on music video format on YouTube too. So I've got some stuff on YouTube for sure. You could type my name in, on a lot of different avenues for podcasts and stuff, and I'm pretty much everywhere.
Hey, you're a bodybuilder too, right? I'm just kidding.
I do work out. It's that Nephilim blood, man. It's natural.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up for us in the cave. If you want to talk more conspiracy truths, Nephilim, or music, then join the Discord community. Link on our Patreon page. You can find it on our website at cave.com. That's cave4v3.com. We usually do a sign out with our screen, but I want to sign out with this. Joel, I have a friend that sent me this video, man. I want to get your expert advice on what you think this may be. It's a Ring camera footage.
Okay.
I think this is the craziest thing I've seen. So let's sign out with
your Amazon package.
Look at these orbs. I thought it was weird because it's pretty consistent.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent. And yeah, is that coming back?
It happens for a while, man. This video is like 3 minutes long. And then the orbs like
I'd love for
split up a little bit.
I was just talking to you about Justin for Cryptids of the Corn. He's good at looking at a lot of these and deciphering whether it's some sort of animal anomaly that's going on or if it's something that's indescribable. That's super weird though.
Yeah, I'll definitely send this over to you. You can
actually, you send it over to me and I'll send it to him and have him take a look at it because he might know. Do you know what area that it was in? Like the
I can ask. It's in Southern California for sure, so I can ask.
Because that dude's good at being like, yeah, there's these type of insect in this area, and I know that it does this weird movement. So he's good at being able to say that or saying like there ain't nothing there that can do that. So that's definitely something weird.
Damn, hell yeah! All right, peace out, guys.
Later, guys.